Hello my darlings, this is Jem for Jessie James Beads. How are you today? It's Tuesday, hooray! For no reason whatsoever other than it's one day better than Monday? I don't know. How are you? Is the weather being kind to you? I understand some of you have got it incredibly hot at the moment, so stay safe, sunscreen, inside, aircon, hydration. Look after yourselves. Mind you, some of us have got the other end of the spectrum, which is just a bit pants. Wherever you are in the world, welcome to Jessie James Beads. Despite the lack of sunshine here in the United Kingdom today, we are working with Sunshine USA. And I can't wait to share the project today and some of the other beads I've got on my board. Let's have a look down on the other camera and take a quick peek at some of the other beads. Do please say hi, let me know that you can see and hear me okay, and tell me about your day. What have you been up to today? Are you having a lovely day? I do hope so. So it's a beautiful collection, Sunshine USA. Think pink, think retro, think gorgeous big bikinis, surfing and holiday days. I hope that some of those days are coming your way very, very soon. So there's a lot to love in this collection, and I've just grabbed a handful of items from Sunshine USA just to have a quick look with you. So these are such a lot of fun. Now, I don't think technically it's pink, but what really excites me is it's crackly and it's got little bits of gold in it as well. Diane is in. Hello, my darling. Hi, Jem. Can't go outside. Way too hot in Connecticut. Stay safe, my darling. I hope that you are able to enjoy your days and just keep yourself safe, darling. So that's one of the bead collections that we have in Sunshine USA. I love those. It's the little flecks of gold that do it for me, I think. We've also got these. Now, I would always have called these bone beads, which is a terrible descriptor. So I'm sure one of the lovely people at Jessie James Beads warehousing or the home will be able to tell us what those are actually called. They are faceted in the most beautiful, it's almost an Amazonite colour, but it flares out most attractively. It looks like a little hourglass. Unlike myself, I look like a little apple. Well, a big apple, actually. Plump in the middle. They are beautiful. Now, you may see part of the piece I've designed for you today, which has gone fully pink. Oh, yes, sunshine pink on my board today. Now, I've used little candy stripe barrels as station beads around the design. You could absolutely pop in these beautiful faceted beads instead. Let's pop that back out of the way and move on a little more. I've got some pink agate beads on my design, but also in the mix are these gorgeous, lightweight. They are Larimar tones. If you've never seen Larimar, it's a beautiful gemstone from one place in the world only. It was made by Mother Nature on the Dominican Republic. Absolutely gorgeous colours of blue skies and fluffy white clouds. So you could use these beautiful square shaped elongated beads in place of the pink agate if that's your preference. Now we had in the mix, let me just grab the bag from over here, some all pink woven beads, and they are huge. I cannot tell you how vibrant they are. You could use those instead of the candy stripes. Absolutely up to you when you're designing with Jessie James Beads. So I have reserved a little handful just here so that I can show you how to recreate the design as I have. However, I'm wondering if you fancy if I use one of these multiple material or mixed media beads with gorgeous flowers on in place of the candy stripe pink. I'm going to let you choose which one you want to work with, and then you can tell me when we're ready to create that part. So we've also got these fabulously elongated beads. They're like overgrown rice in a lovely, now it's a pale pink, but it's not a shy and retiring pale pink. It's quite an impactful pink. So you could use those anywhere on your designs for Sunshine USA. Laurie has joined us. Hello, darling. How's the weather where you are? What have you been up to today? Are you making jewellery? Is it too hot? What did you get up to? Is it 11 a.m. where you are? It's just a little after 4 p.m. here. So you can see that Sunshine USA has got a lot to offer you. Fun and funky. I've reserved some beads to work with and we'll get cracking with our project in a second. So Sunshine USA is the mix we're working with today, and I've popped that link down in the video description for you if you wanted to take a gander at the whole range. And it's a big range. There is so much to love. So the way I have crafted today's project, let's just pop these beads up and out of the way for a second, is I've popped mine on a wire necklace and just crafted a little hook closure at the back. The reason for that is I could not find in my house anywhere any beading thread. So you absolutely 100% can make this on beading thread and not worry about having a wire choker. This is just because I've got so much wire in my house, it was easy for me to use. Laurie says it's warm today and hope to be beady. Love that colour pink. Did you see the other ones? Did you see the other collection of, I want to call them rope beads, but I don't think that's right. They are fabulous as well. I really enjoy that colourway. Beautiful. You've also got these little fellas with some gold leaf mixed in. Loads of choices in Sunshine USA. These are the beads that I've pulled from my little stock that came through. And that's what we'll be working with today. So the main part of today's tutorial is how to create this centerpiece, which, another thing I wanted to show you, I always have on hand chain reaction split into two parts with an oversized clasp at the back. Thank you, darling. And then down at the base, I have some teeny tiny little clasps. These are like lobster or parrot clasps, however you prefer to know them. And what you can then do is create tiny little bar necklaces. So you could make this over and over again, just using a handful of the beads. And then instead of having the big wire collar at the back, you can use your chain reaction. Now I've got these in multiple colours. They're really handy to have. And it just means that you don't end up recreating the same thing over and over again. And you can make bunches and bunches of designs from your Sunshine USA collection. Look at that beautiful little flingo. I call them flingos because I think it's funny. So let's create together this shape right now down at the base, and I'll show you how to make these little dingly dangly bits as well. And like I said earlier, you can either create a little bar and add it to a chain reaction, you can do the whole piece but pop it onto beading thread, or you can of course use that slightly heavier wire. This is 16 gauge wire that I've used to create the necklace, but we're going to be working for the most part with 18 gauge. It's much easier to wrangle, and it's perfectly strong enough for what we want to do today. So in terms of tools, I'm going to be using my multi-step bail makers, but you could use a set of pliers, round nose pliers with a mark on them, so that you can get that same size on those little round forms over and over again. So I'm going to use some copper colour wire. Now, I don't particularly know whether or not that goes with the pinks. I don't think it really does. However, what it does do when I'm crafting for you is it shows up on the camera beautifully. So I'm just going to scooch this little beady fella all the way up to the top there and just leave that main featurette sticking down in the corner. And the rest of the necklace is just whatever order of beads you fancy using from the Sunshine USA collection. So we have a choice now, my darlings. Do you want me to use this absolutely fabulous mixed media floral bead, or do you want me to recreate the piece exactly the same with that candy stripe I'm going to call it a rope bead. I don't know what they're called, but these are gorgeous. I love the candy stripe ones, and it goes so beautifully with the candy stripe barrel beads, which in turn team gorgeously with this agate. Really lovely to work with is agate. The mixed floral. Yes, please, says Diane. Laurie says mixed floral. Well, let's use this little fella then, shall we? I'll pop my big rope bead back out of the way. So if you are going to use your round nose pliers to create these forms, in order to get that same size over and over again, you can just pop a little mark on with a marker pen of some description or another. You could use a bit of tape if you didn't want to use marker pen, but what I found is that alcohol gel or varnish, nail varnish remover, will generally take those marks off. However, I just leave them on because they're really, really useful, but you can take it off if you need to. So there are two things you need to be mindful of really when you're recreating this design. One is the spacing between the loops that we're going to make needs to be an even spacing. And secondly, you're going to need to think about the size of the roundness here. So my bead that we're going to work with right now, the mixed media floral bead, is ever so slightly smaller than the wonderful rope bead. So you just need to keep that in mind when you're creating around your focal. Just keep that size in mind. So I have got about 14 inches of wire. Now that's far too much, but I'm going to cut some off either end to use for the tails, just down here at the base of the design. Good morning, Elsa. How are you today? How's the weather where you are in the world? So I'm just warming through the centre, and this is 18 gauge. I've got about, let's say, 14 to 15 inches of wire. Little bit too much, but I'm not going to worry about it because I will work on that later. I will use those tail ends that I'm going to cut away. So I'm diving in with my multi-step bell makers, but you could use your memory wire finishers or your round nose pliers. And I'm going to start just to one side of the middle. And let's decide that we're going to use step number 3 today to create those round forms. So I'm going to rotate that wire around, and I'm just going to flip it around because I don't want it to hit the camera. That would be a bit rude. And what we're looking for is a loop on that wire, which we will in a moment just flatten down. I just wanted to show you all we're doing is we're creating a loop. So if I just warm that wire through a little bit either side, it's very chilly here today, so not ideal. What I'm going to do is just very, very delicately, if I go from underneath with those bent chain nose pliers, if you give that a very soft little squish, that loop sits neatly on a flat line. So we're going to recreate that again, and if you remember it was number 3 on those multi-step bail makers. Let's draw that wire around again, and I need my loops to be a little closer together than with the rope bead because my mixed media floral bead is slightly smaller. So let's just draw that wire all the way around and take a look at what we've got. So you can see that that's all looking a little bit uneven at the moment. We're not going to worry about it. We're just going to use those chain nose pliers just to sit that straight on that line of wire. So altogether, reasonably happy with that so far. You can take a lot more time if you want to do this at home with me. And don't forget to share your creations and give us a little @JessieJamesBeads so that we can see them on social media. You can pop a message over on my page as well. It's Gemhawks Jewellery, and you can let me know if you're enjoying the projects that I create with you here at Jessie James Beads. So let's go for a third loop. Generally speaking, when I'm making designs like this, I go for odd numbers. If it was a really massive bead, hold on, let me show you. All the way over here, I've got some really huge flat discs. Now they would work perfectly in this design as well, in place of that candy stripe rope bead. In which case you could probably, if you went for a slightly smaller loop, you could probably get 5 on there. But the reason I go for an odd number is so that we have a central focal drop to work with. So let's make the third loop that we're going to use today. Again, number 3 on those bail makers, draw that wire around. Now I'm going to purposefully make this too far away. Let's just draw that plier out of the way. So what we're looking for is to have these round forms the same distance apart, and you can see that this one is far too far over to the right. So if that happens to you, and it sometimes does, pop your little round form back in and just rotate it around, resting it down on your finger until you get that correct spacing. So let's take another look. That looks much more like it. So if we again take those chain nose pliers just underneath and hold the centre of that loop, you can press this other section away, give it a little bit of a straighten if it's gone awry, and that looks pretty equidistant to the next, to the next. If you do need to make fine adjustments, you can just pop that in, draw that flat wire away, so that you get that same effect again. And I'm just going to utilise my chain nose plier from underneath just to straighten that wire so that I'm happy with how that looks. Now, if you wanted to use bits of chain, you can drop the bits of chain in at this time by sliding the last link of chain over the top all the way around until you get whatever you want to use in each of those loops. What we're going to do is add them retrospectively in a moment or two. We're not going to worry about anything like that right now because we'll make simple loops into which we can pop onto our little loops down here. So let's give that a smooth through. Now, in terms of the next tool I'm going to use, I'm going to grab a mandrel from our friends at Beadalon. This is a wooden mandrel form. They should still be available on the website. So you can check over at jessiejamesbeads.com or jessiejamesbeadsuk.com and see what we have available. So what I'm going to do is to start off by making a form with my central loop centralised. So if I just pop that over the top and then lift the form up, I'll show you how that works. We're just going to pull that around our round form. Now, if you don't have one of these fab mandrel kits, don't worry. I'm sure there's something in your household that you can use. As long as it's not breakable, you'll be absolutely fine. So the lid of some varnish or a chunky marker pen, something like that. So I'm just going to take a second to make sure that I'm happy with how that looks. I could probably have used a slightly smaller form because my bead is slightly smaller, but I'm just going to show you how to adjust that by hand just to get it to sit how you want it to. So I'm using, again, my bent chain nose pliers. You don't have to use bent ones. The reason I use them is that I can get right underneath the project and show you on the overhead camera. Giving that a little bit of a squish. Now let's try that bead in the middle for size. I think that will sit really nicely. A little bit of space either side because this is a 3D bead. We don't want to be too snug to it. You can bring that a little bit more snug. What did I do with that round one? There it is. You can bring it a little bit more snug against a perfectly round bead because that will rotate easily. Whereas a bead that has this three-dimensional nature will have slightly different surface levels. So it might be clear and free on one moment and then you rotate it and one of the petals will catch. So give yourself a little bit of space if you're going to use that mixed media floral bead. So overall, I'm quite happy with how that looks. So I'm just going to put a teeny tiny bit of strengthening in my wire. Opening and closing. You can use your vinyl facing pliers. Let me just see if I have some. Yes, I do. If you're concerned about marking your wire, you can use your vinyl pliers just to give that a little bit of strengthening. I'm not pressing anywhere that wire crosses over, just single bits. Thank you very much, Laurie. It's lovely to have your company. I appreciate you hanging out with me on the live. And love to all of you guys who are watching on the replay, on the blog and on YouTube. So just a little bit of percussive strengthening there with some vinyl faced pliers. We'll just strengthen that up ever so slightly. So let's take a look. Where are the holes in this little baby? There we go. So if I sit that like so, I think that looks pretty good size-wise. That floral bead is so pretty, isn't it gorgeous? So what I'm going to do is just pinch the two ends of my design together. Not hard, just softly. And I'm going to give around about 3 inches of wire. And then I'm just going to trim away just past that 3-inch mark from that last loop. These pieces of wire can be used to create the droppers. We'll use one of those in a second, so they're not wasted. Now for this next section, I am going to use my multi-step bell making pliers again. If you don't have any, don't worry, you can use a round form. you can also use your memory wire finishing pliers or round pliers. It's just a little bit easier to do what we need to do with these. Now, 3 inches of wire is far more than we need, and I just wanted to show you that you have so many choices when working with wire. It's such a fun medium. What we're going to do is to create a spiral coming away utilising this 18 gauge wire. So I think for this piece I'm going to use number 2 on my bail makers. I'm going to start at the end, and now it does pay to make sure that these are the same length because it may be relevant. And what we're going to do is to create a spiral nice and slowly, and I'm just going to allow that to circle round like so, moving it gently, trying to keep it relatively straight until I've created a little bit of a spring. Now I'm going to stop there for a second, remove my plier, and have a look and see how those drill apertures in the mixed media bead line up. So I think I can probably take that spring a little bit further down because there's too much space in the design just here. So let's pop that down, pop the right peg of your pliers in, and just take that down a little bit further, and then we'll flip the design over and do the same. Now, because I'm working now effectively on the rear of the design, you just need to be aware of which way that spiral has formed. So it's coming that way and away from the centre of the design, which means that when I start rotating my pliers around, instead of rotating the pliers away from me, I now need to rotate them towards me because I've inverted the design. There's no funny science to it, and it's very easy visually to see. I just remove those pliers for a second, that those 2 springs are both going backwards. They're both on the same side of the design. So if I put that down, that's how it's going to be worn. We'll finish these up in just a second, not to worry about them. Let's flip that back over for a moment, put the number 2 peg back in, and keep rotating. Now, I would advise taking a little bit more time than I am today to make your little springy bits nice and neat and tidy. So let us take a moment with a piece of scrap wire for a second. Whoops. Let's just smooth and warm this through for a second. What we're looking to occur is to have those springs straight. So you can see that the left-hand spring is pointing ever so slightly downwards as it moves away from the centre. So you can take a few moments to obviously just go a little bit slower than I am. I don't want you to get bored, but you can just straighten that up very, very softly or gently. You can even put it back onto the peg on your pliers and just ensure that that is sitting straight so that when you put the wire through, like so, everything will hang neatly. So as I mentioned earlier, I've used a heavy gauge wire to thread all of my beads and that centerpiece together, but you could equally just use some beading thread, whatever medium you prefer to work with. I want people to be excited by wire in jewellery, but I do understand that not everybody finds it as yummy as I do. Let's take that wire out for a second. So if you decide that that spring is far too long, or like has happened here, let me just bring that up ever so slightly and tilt it in the light. The end of the wire, just there, is on the front of the design. I don't like that. I want that to end at the back so I don't have to look at it in final wear. What we need to be very careful of is that we're just trimming one little circuit of wire away, like so. And can you see how that just improves the overall look of the design? So you can count how many visible wraps of wire there are. There are 5 on this side. They should be the same because we measured that wire as being the same. So let's just trim a second piece away on the other side, trying to get it equal to the first cut that we made, using the correct side of your flush cutters. Now I've done that really close to the top. The reason for that is it's invisible at the front, but it's much less likely to hurt you than if it's sticking out halfway down. So again, do take more time than I did just to make that spring nice and neat and tidy. That's the main central part. Now I have a piece of stunt wire here, and this is just to show you how you would build your necklace. So I'm going to take the end of my beading thread, heavy wire, whatever medium you're using, to thread all of your beads on. I'm going to put it through the first half of that design. Find the hole in my feature bead, feed that through the middle, out the other side, and then just draw the tail of your beading thread or wire back and push it out the other side, and then you can add on whatever order of beads you like. Now at this stage you might want to just adjust the tilt on those springs, and I'm going to do that by hand because it is the safest way to ensure that that sits how you want it to. I'm much happier with that. Let's just have a look and see if these lovely pink agate beads go on this wire. They should do. They went on the bigger one. So there's one of those, and then one of those, and then you can play around with stations like I did with these candy stripe beads. You can have whatever order you like, but what I tend to do is just one on either side at a time, and I can watch it build up, and when I'm happy, that's when I'll tie the end off. If you missed it when I was chatting earlier, I keep a stack of, where's it gone? Here it is. I keep a stack of these little babies. Now this is a chain reaction, which has been cut in half, and on one end, I've got little clips or clasps of your choice, and then at the other end I've got a big closure which will sit at the nape of the neck. So that means that if you wanted to, you could simply finish your feature necklace just here. This is not the best colour to demonstrate with, but it's the one I had next to my desk. Do a little wrapped loop at either end and then add on, and in that way you can repeat this design multiple times in different colours and have multiple little mix and match necklace designs. I do love a little bit of mix and match. So let's just pop this up to the middle for a second. We're going to find one of those scraps of wire and we're going to make a dangle for the centre. I might need to pinch a bead from somewhere else. Let's do it with one of those and one of those. Now that colour actually doesn't work for me, so I might just pinch one of these off the end. That's going to be much, much better. Let's pop those back to their respective bowls. Yep, that's going to work for me. So I made dangles from some of the beads that matched colour-wise. So I went for the candy striped pink barrel beads and then the elongated barrel beads in that beautiful fuchsia agate. So let's just sit that up out of the way for a second. What we're going to do is have a look at whether or not we need to trim the ends of the wire. We do. So let's just take a tiny, tiny little bit with the flush cutters away. The reason I put my finger over the end is not because I want to trim my finger, it's because I've had a camera ruined by flying wire and I don't want to do that again. So let's now bring in our round nose pliers. Give that a warm through. And we're going to use the very end of our round nose pliers to start generating a spiral. So let's draw that around until it's almost a complete circle, but not quite. When that is almost there, what we're going to do is now grip across that circular-ish form and start pushing it into a non-dominant hand. So if you are left-handed, you can invert this, push that into your non-dominant finger, and we're going to rotate around 2 times. What do I mean by that? We're going to start here, all the way in a circle once, all the way in a circle twice, so just a tiny bit more. And then I'm going to give that a squish. Again, if you're concerned about marking your wire, you can use your vinyl-faced pliers just to give that a little bit of strengthening. What I'm going to do now is to pull the wire away at an angle, like so. So that's coming away. If that was a clock face, it's coming away up at 12 o'clock. And I'm going to add some beads to make my central dangle. So on the piece that I made to demonstrate with you today, I went for a central with 1 candy stripe pink barrel and then 2 of those fuchsia agates. And that's going to sit in the centre. Either side of that, you'll repeat the design. If you wanted to have that exactly the same with that graduating drop, you just go for 1 of those fuchsia barrels either side. So I'm just going to pinch hold of the end where that spiral is. I'm going to make sure that that is flat to the board. Put my nail over the top of that wire. The reason I'm doing that is I'm protecting my fuchsia agate bead. Pull that wire forwards at 90 degrees. So if I just show you that sideways, it's 90 degrees opposed to the spiral. So let's now make a small loop. let's use these as we have them right here, right now. So I think I'll go for number 2 on those multi-step veil making pliers and just rotate that around until the centre of the circle sits at the top of the bead, and then you can trim away any excess, minding that bead. I just pull that down out of the way. I'm putting my thumb over, but all I'm doing is closing to make sure that that doesn't ping up at you. That would be terrible. So what we will then do is make sure that the very tail end of the wire where we cut sits against that angle change. Protect your bead whilst you give that a really hearty squish. Once you're happy that that is squished into position, we're going to open it like a jump ring. Pull that away sideways so you only deform half of the loop. And then we're going to choose the front of our design. So this was the front and that was the rear side. I mean, if you like it, you could have it that way, but I much prefer it this way. And then we're just going to loop that into position and close it up. The reason I'm holding it funny is because I do not want to lose those beads off the end. So that will need to sit around the centre. It's got itself turned upside down. And then we will close that in exactly the same way. So if I show you that sideways, we're just closing that back up to its original position. If it has gone awry at all, just give it a little bit of a squish until it sits where you want it to. So let me just draw this up into the middle. And then we'll bring in the demonstration piece as well. So which is your favourite? Do you prefer the candy stripe rope bead in the silver? Or do you like the mixed media floral bead as the centerpiece? These are so pretty. I love the attention to detail. And like I said to you earlier, you could go for smaller loops, you could go for more loops, but I do tend to go for an odd number of loops on that centerpiece, just because it means you can have a central dangle and it just looks a little bit more elegant having that central piece. If you wanted to have all the same length, then do go for your life, because the loops are slightly higher every time they go up around the circle. It will mean that you'll get a little bit of natural graduation anyway. So let's have a look. Diane says the floral bead is beautiful, and Laurie says love them both, so pretty. Thank you very much for hanging out with me today for Sunshine USA. I swear it's got warmer since I started this video. Maybe it's just that I chat a lot. So I've really enjoyed designing with you today. My name is Jem. If we've never met before, I live in the United Kingdom. And this is Jessie James Beads, and we're looking at our fabulous Sunshine USA collection. I've popped a link in the video description for you so that you can go and check out those beads. Let me know in the comments which is your favourite colour combination. Don't forget there are so many other colourways to choose from. We've got these gorgeous Larimar square beads. Are they square? They're not really. They're rectangular, aren't they? Thank you for the video. Thank you, Jem. Lovely to have your company. We've also got these fabulous little Amazonite coloured pillows. Somebody can tell me what the shape is called professionally, I'm sure. Have the most beautiful day, and thank you ever so much for hanging out with me today at Jessie James Beads. See you soon. Bye for now.